Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Perkenalkan, nama saya Putri Ayienda Dinanti S.S. M.Hum, dosen tetap dari Sastra Inggris, Universitas Dian, Nusantara. Nah, pada hari ini izinkan saya untuk membuat sebuah video di mana ini adalah bagian dari unjuk diri dalam Tridharma Perguruan Tinggi untuk sertifikasi dosen 2026. Di mana khususnya ini adalah bagian dari aspek pengajaran. Baik, sebelum lebih lanjut, saya ingin menjelaskan sedikit terkait deskripsi singkat dari mata kuliah yang akan saya ilustrasikan. Di mana mata kuliah ini berjudul dengan Sastra Bandingan atau Comparative Literature, khususnya di dalam dunia sastra. Nah, di sini adalah mata kuliah yang memang ingin mengasah kemampuan mahasiswa dalam bagaimana dapat mengaplikasikan teknik-teknik pengkajian sastra yang sebenarnya tidak hanya dilakukan terfokus dalam satu karya sastra saja, mungkin seperti yang biasa dilakukan pada national literature atau world literature, tapi di sini juga bisa mengaplikasikan kajian di mana mereka dapat membandingkan dari dua atau bahkan lebih karya sastra yang memang kaitannya juga berkaitan kuat dengan contohnya seperti kebudayaan, politik, dan yang pasti diskursus ilmu lainnya. Nah, di sini saya ingin menjelaskan sedikit terkait CPMK pada mata kuliah ini, di mana yang pertama mahasiswa diharapkan mampu untuk merinci konsep dasar sastra bandingan dan aplikasinya dalam berbagai teknologi. Lalu kemudian mahasiswa mampu menganalisis komparasi terkait formula dan struktur dalam sastra bandingan. Setelah itu mereka diharapkan mampu membuat karya tulis untuk mengenal kajian sastra bandingan. Nah, di sini saya juga ingin menjelaskan terkait alokasi dari penilaian mata kuliah, di mana yang pertama adalah hasil proyek atau kasus yang di sini memiliki dominasi penilaian cukup tinggi, yaitu 40%, di mana mereka diharapkan untuk dapat memberikan sebuah luaran dalam bentuk tulisan karya ilmiah. Lalu selanjutnya itu ada juga UTS dan esai, di mana esai berbentuk UTS dan begitu juga dengan UAS yang masing-masing memiliki nilai 20%, dan ada juga tugas praktik berbentuk presentasi, lalu ada proyek bentuk-bentuk lainnya yang memang juga dialokasikan dalam bentuk 20% penilaian. Nah, di sini untuk metode pembelajaran yang digunakan adalah blended learning, di mana dilakukan pembelajaran antara luring dan begitu juga menggunakan dengan forum yang bisa diakses pada sistem universitas bernama kuliahonline.undira.ac.id. Nah, di sini untuk pembelajaran berjumlah sekitar 16 sesi, di mana sesi 1 sampai 7 adalah sesi pembelajaran langsung, pengenalan materi, dan alokasi terkait penugasan. Dan kemudian di sesi ke-8 adalah UTS, lalu dilanjutkan dengan sesi ke-9 sampai ke-15 yang memang fokusnya sudah lebih ke arah teknik-teknik penulisan atau kajian sastra menggunakan sastra bandingan, yang harapannya di sesi ke-16 bersamaan dengan UAS, teman-teman mahasiswa bisa memberikan luaran dalam kajian tulisan ilmiah yang memang berkaitan dengan dunia sastra bandingan. Nah, kira-kira seperti itu Bapak Ibu sekalian, dan di sini saya ingin mengenalkan sebuah video ilustrasi yang memang berkaitan dengan sesi ke-15 yang berjudul The World of Comparative Literature. Di sini bahwasanya berkaitan dengan review of sessions, tetapi juga ingin memperkuat bagaimana pengenalan dan hasil dari pemahaman teman-teman mahasiswa dalam apa saja yang perlu dipersiapkan untuk teman-teman mahasiswa mampu memproduksi sebuah kajian tulisan ilmiah yang baik. Baik, kira-kira seperti itu. Silahkan enjoy dan terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, hello. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon everyone. Okay, thank you for coming, both for Cibubur students and the others from Tandoria. Hello, good afternoon. Friends from Tandur, where are your voices? Okay. Yeah, here actually we have a couple of students, both from Tandur and Cibubur, yeah. Where here approximately around 10 from Tandur, and there are around 10 as well from Cibubur, yeah. And for today, I would like to have the 15th session for comparative literary course that we will learn, yeah. That mostly for these 14 sessions, I believe that we already got a lot of explanation related to that course. And for today, once again, I will do some review that hopefully will make you more understandable this course. So I hope that everyone's ready, yeah? Are you ready, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Now, let's just start. For the first explanation that I would like to explain to you, it's about the objective of this course. Where for the abstract, I believe that this module explores comparative literature, yeah, by examining its fundamental concepts related to world literature and its primary objects. So basically, if you still remember, we already learned a lot of materials, yeah, from the differences between how we analyze the other kind of literary analysis. And then after that, we also have learned how we actually compare the works based on region, based on the authors. You still remember, yeah, hopefully. So by we reviewing these materials, then we will be more comprehensive, yeah. By learning that this session we will review all of them, and hopefully that will make you have better comprehension of all those materials. Okay, so that's for the opening for this course. So let me open. Do you still remember the differences and the similarities? Okay, so I would like to remind all of you, yeah. For the maybe from the second word, it's national literature. National literature is a literary work that usually comes from, depend on the nationality of a place. Yeah. For example, we. What are we? Who are we? Indonesian, right? So, national literature means that it is the literary work that comes from Indonesia, the nation where we live, like that. And as for the world literature, yeah, it defines how a literary work is actually defined as the general forms, but the ones that actually are very popular around the world. So if we talk about world literature, are the works that actually very well known across the countries around the world, like that, yeah. And how about the comparative literature? Actually, it goes again to how we perceive, how comparing literary works can be in many forms. If you still remember how we already learned a lot of techniques related to comparing literary works from, like I said previously, like we compare it based on the region, or we call it as cross-cultural analysis. And then we also compare it between the authors, yeah, maybe from one author that he or she has several literary works, and then we should analyze those works to know more about the author. And then what else? Yeah, of course, many forms that actually involve on how comparative literary technique is applied to basically in a literary criticism related to one or more literary works. So basically, what is comparative literature? Comparative literature has been interpreted as the study of two or basically more. Yeah, like I believe that you already studied like maybe 3, 4, or even if you still remember the article that talks about diachronic analysis, it's even more than 10, right?
But it depends on how the mode or the method that you will apply in your analysis. But basically, by doing comparing only two literary works, yeah, it still works. And for example, maybe English and German, or Indonesian and Malaysia, even East and West, there are multidimensional components that you should be looking inside or on the literary analysis. And it may include, like for example, many kinds of disciplinaries, start from historical, gender, economic, cultural, social, philosophical, religious, even though moreover like linguistic factors of the distinct cultures that we analyze. So there will be many factors that you can analyze later in your literary criticism. But of course, still using the comparative technique.
Now, for the first one, based on regions. Okay, can you guess, Madame Bovary? Do you still remember where does it come from? Indonesia? No? France? Correct, Maya. It's from France. And how belenggu, teman-teman, or friends from Bandung? Where does belenggu come from? Someone please answer. Who wants to answer? I will choose. Fiji. Yeah, where does belenggu come from? Malaysia? Thailand? The country? Belenggu. Yeah, not clear, yeah, but I can guess from your mouth shape. It's Indonesia. Yeah, correct. Yeah, you still remember belenggu comes from a very well-known author named Armin Pane. So that was one of sample, yeah, in how we can comparing literary works between based on region. Now we will talk about how it depends on region where we analyze this kind of comparative literary criticism, where what we should be noticed or highlight, it comes from the influence from culture. Like for example, we talk about the language, the dialects that appear between the words. Maybe for example, in Madame Bovary, we can guess that the accent will have French accent, maybe with some words that only common in French language. As for the belenggu will of course use Indonesian language, bahasa Indonesia, but not only bahasa Indonesia, maybe some slang from Java. And then the naming of the characters will be different, right? That's why culture, like language and dialect, should be highlighted. And then of course the traditions and costumes as well, where regional cultural traditions and customs of course can have considerable impact, like maybe the motifs related to religious practice, folklore, any kinds of traditions that we can find. Maybe from the original work, like from France, what are the practice, and then moreover how we applied it from Indonesia, because we know that our country has very varied traditions, right? That's why we should consider to talk about them in this kind of comparative literary criticism. And the second one is historical background. For example, historical events, colonial influences, those kinds of things that we should talk about in our literary criticism. Like maybe for example, there are certain historical events that are captured in both of the writings, and how they will be different. That's what we should talk about. And as for the colonial influences, maybe that Madame Bovary has this kind of setting where a civil war or the Second World War is talked about,
or maybe from Lembu or the other words has a similar setting. Those kind of things that we should highlight and inspire our writings. That's how historical is important. And of course the geographical characteristics start from landscape and environment, how physical attributes such as landscapes, climate, natural resources, most of them that actually comes from physically, and related to setting. Which kind of setting? Setting of time or place, if we talk about physical attributes. Setting of place, of course, yeah? So the setting of places, how we define each setting that we should talk about. And then of course the urban and rural literature as well. It may be a work, it has the setting of urban, yeah? And then after we would like to compare it to another work, it has rural. They have like different geographical attributes, right? But has the same length, for example, and topics. It also still can be analyzed together. So how are the differences? But how they produce similarities? Those kind of things that once again can be talked about inside your paper if you want to analyze comparative literary criticism based on Asia. Okay, for the second one, let's talk about based on author. Okay, I would like to ask you a question. So, what is the name of the first literary work? Yeah, who wrote this? Teman-teman from Tanggung? Who wrote this? Wilbert about to answer me. Yeah, of course, it's written on the screen. It's Romeo and Juliet. It's William Shakespeare. But we produce it into many forms of adaptation. Do you know? No, me myself don't know. Actually, Romeo and Juliet has been adapted to very or many kinds of films, short stories, and I don't know all of the creators of those adapted works. But the original author is William Shakespeare. And as for The Tempest, this is the second work that actually we've learned. The Tempest is another work from William Shakespeare that actually produced, I can forget, approximately 15 years after Romeo and Juliet produced. So it has some kind of long gap between the first and the second works. Let's talk about it more. So this is one of the examples that we talk about the criticism based on author. Okay, so comparing between literary works where it is based on authors, it depends on how we investigate theme, character, and of course the author themselves to be analyzed. So that's the keywords that you should remember. And by understanding literary themes, it means that we should know the underlying ideas, motives, concepts between the works that we will analyze from the same author. So basically, that's the one thing that we should know. Whether maybe they have similar topics between one work to another, like for example, Romeo and Juliet and The Tempest. Do they have similar themes? Do they have underlying motives? How can we interpret the conflicts, the rift between the characters? Do the works have similar ideas? That's the things that you should notice. Yeah? And then this, because it is the backbone of literary works, it infuses how maybe one character can develop, and then we can see how the character from one work to another work within the same author, they can produce some kind of meaning later, and will the meaning will be different, will be similar? That's the things, once again, that you should talk about. And then we talk about the character analysis as well, where we know, without characters, there would be no story, of course. That is why character analysis between two works, even though it comes from the same author, it's very, very important. Because it will be highlighted by how one character can have uniqueness, how one character can develop, and does he or she, the main character, in another work is actually the same with the previous work from the same author, things like that you should analyze.
Okay, so that's all actually that I will teach you guys. Yeah, it is the review of sessions that we have talked about from the previous sessions. Now, I would like to open a Q&A session. So, I will let a question maybe from students from Cibubur. Who wants to ask the question?
Amy,
Okay.
should I stand or sit?
It's okay from your seat.
Okay. Hi, Miss Putri, and I would like to ask, what is the difference between folklore and mythology? Because it's, I think there's some similarity between them, and that made me confused.
Okay. Actually, Mutiara asked about the differences between folklore and mythology. Okay, the first things that the definition, maybe the definition. So if we talk about folklore, it's a story that comes from tradition, the way of life, how certain people in a certain region lives, So it can be, it can talk about a lot of things. Like what I said, the way of living, or maybe things that are related to, I don't know, daily life topics, romance, maybe horror, fear. So those are stories that the setting, the characters, once again is very tied to the tradition of some people in certain regions. But myth, usually, they talk about further big entities, like maybe gods, dewa, or some kind of belief related to supernatural entities that maybe they are worshipped, or not only worshipped, they are feared. Myth is like that. Myth doesn't necessarily should contain story. You get what I mean? Like for example, folklore means that it has to be a story from the plot, from the exposition until the resolution. But if you talk about myth only, what is the myth? Oh, it's a myth that there is maybe a god from a certain lake that occupied that lake. Only things like that. And what is the story? After someone asks, what is the story? Can you tell us the fictional, the story that contribute to the existence of the god? Here comes folklore. Folklore and myth is related to each other actually. But if we talk about myth, actually, usually it talks about a background of how something happened and how gods, supernatural entities, and then after, if we want to talk about the background, what happened? And then here comes the story. Folklore can be called things like that as well. Because if we talk about folklore, it's more general. It's more broader, the scope. It can be many things that we talk about, but actually it stems from tradition or stories that, talks about every little things from the way of life of the people. But myth is more specific in the myth.
Okay, now let's move to students from Kandun. Who wants to ask the question? I will let one person to ask. Okay, Glory, what is your question?
Can you hear me clear?
Yes?
My question is how to handle comparison of literary works that came from the same author, but the author wrote books in more than one language.
Okay, so one author, but they work on different languages from his work, like that. Okay, so basically, if one author he or she produce many works, we want to compare by different language. Yeah, basically it will be the same. Like I already taught you before, guys. Yeah, related to how we still analyze the words. But what happened? Yeah, of course, we should translate. We should translate words that which language that dominantly that you will use. For example, of course, for us it's English, right? So it may be one word, one author, he produced mainly in English, or maybe translated like to English. And then the other one is bahasa Indonesia, yeah. Yeah, because it depends actually which one that you want to talk about. Yeah, because we are students of English literature, right? Yeah, of course we can try to match them, like for example. But no need to really translate because you know bahasa Indonesia and you know bahasa Inggris. So the evidence that being compared that it's okay comes from bahasa Indonesia, for example, and then the other comes from bahasa Inggris. For example, there is a table. We would like to compare. Oh, the setting, right? The setting. The word A, rumah. Rumahnya si ibu. And then after the other word, the house of apa? For example, the campus of Undira. It's okay in different languages. That's what I mean. But of course, in writing the papers, yeah, you should analyze. You should try to analytically cite the sources using your dominant language that you would like to use in your paper, which is English, of course. Yeah, if you are an English literature student. So it doesn't matter, Glory. Just follow. Maybe still write the paper in English, but when it comes to bringing evidence, analyze evidence, yeah, just use the real or the original language from each word, things like that. Yeah, because it doesn't really change the meaning. Only the boundaries are only from the language, right? But language can be overcome, of course, as long as we know the meaning. But for example, one word is from India. We don't know the language of India, right? And the other word is English. What happened? Yeah, of course, you should translate the Indian version to your bahasa, to your language that you know. Yeah, after that you can compare. But still, use the evidence in their original forms. Okay, that's all for today. Yeah? No other questions? Okay, thank you. So that's the end of our Q&A session. For the closing, I would like to give some conclusion where now you know comparative literature is not about ranking or judging one literature against another, but it's rather about understanding, connecting, and then critiquing, celebrating, and it aims to create more interconnected world. How now you know, where analyzing literature, it's not necessarily only one literary work that we can do, but now we know it can be more than one. It can be comparing between 2 works, 3 works, or even many works that, of course, you still need to know the similarities and differences between those works. Okay, I think that's all from me. Thank you. Hopefully that you will comprehend and get more knowledge from my course. That's all for today. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.